Hi everyone and welcome to the Dibbly-Dobbly Podcast. Before we get started, make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page as well. On today's episode of the podcast, we review the second test match between Australia and India from the MCG and preview the third test match of the series from the SCG. Let's remind ourselves how the test match played out over the 4 days at the MCG. Australia won the toss and chose to bat first. Australia made 195 all out in their first innings. Marnus Labuschagne was the top scorer with 48, and Jasprit Bumrah was the leading wicket taker for India, taking 456. India in their first innings in reply, all out for 326. Rahane top scored with 112, and Nathan Lyon and Mitchell Starc both taking 3 wickets each. Australia in their second innings, all out for 200. Cameron Green was the top scorer with 45. Siraj was the leading wicket taker, taking 3 for 37. India was set a target of 70 to win. They chased them down in 15.5 overs, finishing 2 for 70. Gill, 35 not out, top scoring. And Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins taking 1 wicket each. India won the match by 8 wickets, and Ajinkya Rahane was named man of the match. My thoughts on this test match was that Australia played poorly, first of all. The batting was poor. The bowling was good at times, but the fielding at times let Australia down as well. It was sloppy, drop catches, and this test match didn't really go to plan for Australia. On the other hand, with India, they played superbly. New captain Ajinkya Rahane has led this Indian side well. He's rallied the team after being bowled out for 36 in Adelaide to come to Melbourne to win by 8 wickets and to bounce back and to level the series at 1-1 is great leadership by him. I think India's selections with Jadeja, Pant, Gill and Siraj coming into the side brought that new energy that India needed to bounce back in the series, and all of their selections worked. Everything they did worked, and they dominated this test match from day 1 to day 4. And it showed throughout the whole test match. So, for me, India played very well in this test match. For Australia, still a lot of improving to do, and a lot of reflecting, and a lot of questions need to be answered with the batting in particular. I thought the MCG pitch played pretty well. There was a balance between bat and ball there, which was good. I thought the partnership between Rahane and Jadeja of 121 for the 6th wicket really set up this win for India, which got India the first innings lead, and for Australia, it was going to be tough to really post a target which was going to make it difficult for India to chase. So for me, that was a crucial partnership that pretty much set up the win for India in this test match. And as we've seen throughout the series so far, the ball dominating the bat, which is good. Obviously, both bowling attacks are bowling superbly, but both batting units are really struggling for runs. And the batsmen now have got to find a way to combat that and try and put the pressure back on to the bowlers. So those are my thoughts from this test match. Overall, Boxing Day at the MCG doesn't get any better than that. We saw a very good test match, and the series now at 1-1 sets up a very good finish for the series heading into the last 2 test matches in Sydney and in Brisbane. Now, we've been talking about the batsmen struggling against the bowlers in this series, and here are some stats to back that up. Australia's run rate of 1.94 from more than 100 overs of batting in their second innings in Melbourne was the lowest or slowest in a completed innings by an Australian team at home in almost 40 years. Australia's run rate in this series is 2.37 and India's is 2.66. And if you look at the Australians' batting and Indian batting strike rates from the first 2 test matches, the only 2 batsmen who have bettered their career strike rates in this series are Tim Payne and Ajit Rahane. So both captains have bettered their career strike rates in this series, whereas the rest have really struggled. And the significant one who has struggled the most is Steve Smith with 14.7, and his career strike rate is 55.09. So it just shows that even the world's best player is struggling in this series. The runs hit a 133 low in an Australian Test summer since the early 1880s. The average run per wicket this summer is 21.5. That is the lowest in any Australian summer way back since 1887-88. And to give you an idea of those runs per wicket averages in those early days in cricket in Australia in the 1880s, 1887-88 was 9.35 runs per wicket. 1886-87, 12.30. 1878-79, 18.26. 1876-77, 18.89. 1882-83, 20.78, and chuck in this summer 2020-21, 21.5. So it just shows that batsmen are finding it hard to score runs. Compared that to last summer against Pakistan and New Zealand when they toured Australia, the average runs per wicket were 34.01. And compare the last series between Australia and India in 2018-19 here in Australia, the average runs per wicket were 30.03. The run rate of 2.63 in this series is the lowest of any summer this century in Australia. So, in saying all that, looking at these stats and numbers, we can clearly see that the balance between the bat and the ball has swung dramatically towards the ball in this series. And I don't mind that. For too long, we've seen the balance between the bat and the ball go the other way to the bat. And really, everybody knows cricket is a batsman's game now. Bowlers are doing it tough. But what I've liked about in this series between Australia and India is the balance has shifted back to the ball, which you like to see. But now, the question is on the batsmen. How can they respond? How can they bounce back? And how can they score runs in this series? Because both bowling attacks are superb. But it's up to the batsmen how to respond and put pressure back on the bowlers from both sides. I think when we get into the third and fourth test matches of this series, I think batsmen will have better plans, better ideas of how to combat the pressure from the bowlers and try and put the pressure back onto the bowlers for once in this series. But in saying all that, it's great to see the ball dominating the bat in this series. It makes for very good cricket rather than the bat just dominate the ball and both sides are scoring 400 plus. Makes really boring cricket, really, if you see that. But seeing the low scores that we have seen thus far in this series, it makes it very interesting to watch, and it makes it intense as well, because both bowling attacks are bowling well, and batsmen are struggling for runs, and you really need to put up a big score to really have any chance of winning the test match, because scoring runs is going to be hard. But it's great to see the balance between the ball and the bat go the other way for once in this test series, and I hope this sets a bit of a trend around the world in terms of the balance between the bat and the ball. But we've still got a long way to try and get the balance right. But in this series here, between Australia and India, in this test series, we've certainly seen the balance in the bat and the ball, the balance sway the other way. But if we can continue this trend and try and get the balance back, it will make very good cricket in the long run. Let's have a look at Australia's performance with both bat and ball in this test match. We'll start with the batsman, Burns, 0-4, Wade, 13-40, Labuschagne, 48-28, Smith 0-8, Head 38-17, Green 12-45, and Tim Payne 13-1. So overall, not a great performance by the Australian batsmen. Quite disappointing, to be quite honest. A lot of batsmen got starts but couldn't get on with it, which is the disappointing factor. We'll have a look at the bowlers, see how they did in this test match. Pat Cummins took 3 wickets for the match. Mitchell Starc, 4 wickets for the match. Nathan Lyon, 3 wickets for the match. And Josh Hazlewood taking 1 wicket for the match. So overall, the bowlers doing a great job again, as always. And they were let down in the field at times. Some sloppy fielding from the Australians at times. And drop catches as well didn't really help. So overall, Australia's performance in this test match was quite poor. And they'll be looking to bounce back heading into Sydney for the 3rd test match. Let's have a look at India's performance in this test match with their batsmen and bowlers. We'll start with the batsmen. Agarwal, 0-5. Gill, 45-35 not out. Pujara, 17-3. Rahane, 112-27 not out. Vihari, 21. Pant, 29. And Jadeja, 57. So overall, the batsmen did pretty well for India in setting up this test match for them. We'll have a look at the bowlers. Excuse me. Ashwin, 5 wickets for the match. Umesh Yadav, only 1 wicket for the match. Bumrah with 6 wickets for the match. And Mohammad Siraj on debut, 5 wickets for him. So the bowlers, once again, doing a good job for India. And India, a complete performance in this test match with both bat and ball. Let's have a look at Australia and India heading into this 3rd test match at the SCG. Let's see how both teams will select their 11s and what both teams need to do to win this 3rd test match at the SCG. Let's have a look at Australia's 11 potentially for this 3rd test match at the SCG. Now, we do know for certain that David Warner will come back into the side, so he replaces Joe Burns. Will Bukowski's been declared fit, so it looks like he could potentially make his debut. And if that's the case, either Matthew Wade or Travis Head misses out. For me, it's going to be Travis Head, because, let's be honest, Matthew Wade's batting a lot better than Travis Head at the moment. So Matthew Wade to stay, and he'll slip down the order back to number 5. So I think the team will look like this. Warner, Bukowski, Labuschagne, Smith, Wade, Green, Payne, Cummins, Starc, Lyon, and Hazlewood. So I think that will be the 11 that Australia go into this 3rd test match. What do Australia need to improve on? Well, a lot of things. Let's start with the batting. That's the main concern. Australia really need to find a way to put the pressure back on the Indian bowlers, have positive intent, look to score, and really put the foot down. With David Warner coming back into the side, he provides that for Australia. He gets Australia off to a good start, as we all know he can do, and really put the pressure on the opposition and take away a test match in one session. I saw him did that in that test match at the SCG against Pakistan, where he scored a century in the session. That's what David Warner can do. And with him in the side, he can get Australia off to a good start, set that foundation and platform for Labuschagne and Smith to come in, take their time, get into their innings, and hopefully get a big score themselves, and hopefully get a big score for Australia for the team total as well. But without Warner in these first 2 test matches, we've seen Smith and Labuschagne be put under pressure. Firstly, because of the Indian bowlers bowling well to them, but they come into positions where Australia are 2, 3 down for not many, and that's really putting pressure on Labuschagne and Smith because they can't afford to get out. When they get out, that puts a lot of pressure on the rest of the batting order to score the runs. And with Warner in the side, he will release that pressure from Labuschagne and Smith and get the team off to a good start, and hopefully for Labuschagne and Smith, come in when Australia's in a good position, 100 on the board or 200 on the board, for example, and they can build their innings themselves, get into their innings, and hopefully get a big score and hopefully set up Australia to win the test match. But what I want to see from Australia is to really have that positive intent, look to score, look to put the pressure back on the Indian bowlers, and get on with it, really. From a batting point of view, the bowlers are going to do a great job as always, so nothing of concern there, because the bowlers are just going to do a fantastic job as they always have done, and they have done in this series thus far. I think Australia will improve their fielding. They need to improve it. In the last game, it was a bit sloppy with drop catches and sloppy ground fielding, so I think they'll address that into this third test match. So if the bowling remains the same and the fielding's a lot better and the batting clicks, then I think Australia are a very good chance of taking a 2-1 lead in this series heading into the fourth test match in Brisbane. Let's have a look at the India 11 for this third test match at the SCG, and Ajinkya Rahane has confirmed the 11 for India. Only 2 changes from Melbourne. Agarwal is out along with Umesh Yadav, Rohit Sharma and Navdeep Saini come in to replace them. So the 11 is Sharma, Gill, Pujara, Rahane, Vihari, Pant, Jadeja, Ashwin, Bumrah, Siraj and Saini. So only 2 changes for India. One of them was a forced change because of the injury to Umesh Yadav that he got in Melbourne. So Saini comes in to replace him and makes his test debut. And it was an obvious decision to get Rohit Sharma in for Agarwal. Agarwal was really struggling in this series in India, going with Rohit Sharma to open the batting with Gill, which I think is a great combination there. 2 aggressive players and get India off to a good start there. What do India need to do to win this test match in Sydney? Well, keep doing what you've been doing, basically. Do all the things right, obviously, the basics. Bat well, bowl well, keep the pressure on the Australian batsmen, and field well. And that's all they need to do, really. They don't need to change anything. Probably don't get complacent is probably my concern with India. Complacency. They had a great win in Melbourne, but they can't get complacent here in Sydney. They've got to play their best cricket. They can't get complacent. They can't think ahead. They've got to think about this test match in Sydney and try and win the test match. So for India, that's all they need to do, I think. Just keep doing what they've been doing. Well, that's the end of the innings. The close of play for this episode of the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. And like and share our Facebook page. Our next episode of the podcast will be after the third test match, where we will be reviewing the third test and previewing the fourth test of the series. Till then, have a very happy new year, keep safe, and bye for now.